Hello and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Today I have Manny Cartoon with me today. Well, you and I just did that kind of that lumberjack logo.
Oh, can we talk?
Mash.
Like, did that happen?
Yeah. So just to kind of catch everybody up, we are working on a co-branded event that's going to be happening locally in my area with Milwaukee Tool and a company that I do work with called Fanu Designs. And Fanu Designs, basically, they build Scandinavian-inspired furniture. They do a lot of cool things with wood. They've done everything from barn doors to outdoor patio to, it's a lot of custom work, but they just do some amazing things with reclaimed wood and things like that. And obviously, Milwaukee Tool is Milwaukee Tool. They're the big red tool company that competes with DeWalt, and they do a fantastic job. And I would say they're like the Nike of the tool world. They're huge. So we're doing this co-branded event, and we're doing some work together. And the concept or the question was thrown out there of how do we do something cool for this event? How do we do something unique? And my idea was, I think we should do something that is unique to the event, but I think it should be a mashup of the two primary brands, which is Fanu and Milwaukee, and do something that's kind of cool, unique. It could be an annual inspired artwork or something like that. And I had called up Manny and I said, hey, let's do something that's kind of mascot driven, that's kind of lumberjack driven, and let's put these elements together and come up with something unique that not only can have some shelf life after this co-branded event, but for the event itself, it'll kind of be the flagship graphic for the event. So we did that. It turned out awesome. And I'll actually use that in one of my pieces of artwork that we do for the podcast. The event is still happening. It's happening in the end of October. I mean, they're getting merch made. They've done stickers and a handful of different things, which I need to send you. But they did some very cool things with it. And it's just a really fun concept. And again, I think it's a concept that most probably wouldn't have thought of because it's a little off kilter. It's not probably your most obvious of solutions, but it's something that was really cool and something that Manny helped us out with. So
for my own work, I tend to pull a lot from sort of weird places, but also specifically like nostalgia. I love the idea that something feels like you've seen it before and it's just kind of a different spin on it, but it feels really familiar. That's absolutely my favorite thing.
Yeah. And that's probably why we connect, because I'm a lover of all things retro.
I also have a like yourself, a pretty deep comic book background. I grew up on comics. I grew up reading comics and had a very expensive pull list up until a couple of years ago, so that's something that always stuck with me. And I still, even though I do, really cartoony mascot stuff now, that kind of stays with me. And dynamic and heroic was always going to be, Jack Kirby poses, and somebody's talking about a monster or something, and they talk about the tongue, and the first image that I get in my head is the Todd McFarlane Venom and stuff. And, none of that ever changes for me. I've always been much more comfortable in the really sort of cartoony space of the thing.
So let's talk a little bit about that and your style, because I like your style, and I think it's got a very succinct look to it. Like, I can kind of look at your stuff and I can kind of tell it's you. Even if I'm just flipping through my feed I don't even have to look at whose page it's coming from. If I see your artwork come through, I'm like, oh, it's Manny. And I look and yep, sure enough, it is. How did you start to develop that style, and what do you believe are kind of the key characteristics of your style? Because you've got a look, you've got a consistency that's built into the work you're doing.
Thank you. It happened really organically. It is a weird, badly done stew of all of my influences all at the same time, and it's the weird sort of jazz that happens from that. It's a little bit of Looney Tunes, it's a little bit of Sam Keith from the Max, it's a little bit of Matt Wagner, the comic book artist Matt Wagner, Al Hirschfeld, the illustrator for the Broadway illustrator, for the simple lines and the flowing lines and stuff, and developed really organically. I've always been a really sort of cartoony, like I've always sort of mixed cartoonist with more in the vein of comic books, like more heroic stuff. Since like 2005 or so, I've worked heavily in Illustrator, but I was treating Illustrator like I was like you would treat traditional ink. A lot of lines, a lot of hatching, a lot of, sort of extra stuff. And I had done some work for a gaming company, and they were just like, I don't know, it's not quite hitting the way we want it to, not quite whatever. And I sat down to say that there's got to be something else. I have to try something else. Let's see what I can throw at the wall and see if I can make it stick. And I've always hated coloring my own work. So I came up with this weird way of working in Illustrator where I'm treating everything like a layered, like layers of paper, like layers of paper dolls. So to some extent, anything that I do, if the client says, oh, can you move the arm over a little bit, or can you, sort of shift the way his head is a little bit, or move the foot a little bit, to some extent I can actually do that with this, because there's no like the outline of the body is one line and then this leg is one line, then I have to recolor the thing. It's actually, an open shape with a stroke that is a brush that I developed with a fill color already in it, so it just kind of all shifts together. That slowly got cleaner and cleaner and cleaner to what you see now.
Yeah, not to get all technical, but as you're walking through the Illustrator, kind of how you do that, that's really smart, because I think, traditionally in Illustrator, how designers are taught to do it, they're taught to make it print ready. They're taught to make it a fluid line and a flat layer. And to your point, you can always flatten it later. You can always merge layers later if you need to, but to keep it nimble and to keep it accessible so you can make those adjustments quickly, that's just smart.
Part of it was dictated by the client work, and part of it was, can I do that? Like, because you honestly have to ask yourself, can I, 20 years of doing comic book work and everything has to be a really clean line, and, brush pens and watercolor stuff, which is what I was trained in, and all this other stuff. Can I really get away with this? Can I do this? 100%. You honestly, if you put your mind to it, you can do whatever you want. So now the way that I work, like for your stuff, the branding I did for your based on your personal brand, I can do a full body that I can turn into a torso, for the right thing. I can also do just the head, and I can do just the thing, and it's all separate pieces, and it actually works out better, the thing as a design. It's kind of nice. It's worked in my favor, especially this year.
Where are you at from a cartooning creator perspective? Like, how are you kind of managing projects today, and where do you want it to go? Like, that's the one thing, and you and I haven't known each other very long, but that was one of my questions for the podcast today. Is I want to know where this whole thing is going, because I think your work is awesome, and I love what you do. But my second part of my comment or my question is, how can we help you get there? Because if there's anything we can do to kind of help move the ball forward, we want to do that. It's just, it's kind of fun to just watch this all kind of happen.
Thank you. I'm going to start there. I'm going to say thank you. I've recently started calling it a house plant, which is a change because, so where I'm at right this minute, I started the year challenging myself on a personal level. I did not know if it was going to be the 100-day challenge or I was going to do something for the whole year. This was, at the beginning of 2021, December 2020, 2021, January, I said, I've always wanted to do more mascot stuff. I'm currently at a full-time job that I liked the people and the money was fine. I didn't need the money. So personal challenge, can I design mascots? Somebody told me about an account that had a sort of a rolling contest that you use their templates to put it on a hat, and design and submit and see what happens. I said, okay, let's do that. I did that for 2 months, managed to get a hat through, and they do everything with New Era. So it's a New Era produced fitted cap, which is a very specific collector's item. It is a very specific community. Guys that collect fitted caps only collect fitted caps and ephemera relating to that. They'd never wear a trucker cap. They'd never wear anything else. I love a trucker cap. I love a snapback. That's not this, you know? So my style fit and worked. I managed to do 100 days creating, I think, at least one or two mascots a week. By the end of the 100 days challenge, I was actively working with some companies doing fitted hat designs for them that they were sending to the factory and getting produced, and also working with people inside of that community that introduced themselves and doing pin designs for them, enamel pins, which is a thing that I came to find out later. Enamel pins within that very small community was something that was birthed because of the pandemic. Because the stores that they were buying at weren't open to kind of keep themselves busy and keep themselves interested and further their community, they had started producing first acrylic pins and then enamel pins, which was really cool. They welcomed me, and that was insane. I've never felt so welcomed and so like brought into something on that level. Like, the stuff that we're talking about happened over 20 years, and I did comic book conventions for like 15 years. Tried to be a good member of the design community in the local Miami area. I've done a billion things over that time, and these guys were just like, "You're awesome. You're weird. You're interesting. You're original. Let's do stuff." That's kind of where I'm at right now. I take these small projects from people, and these are just guys. These are just guys that are part of this community, that are contributing to this thing and are in love with their hobby and in love with their local stuff and want to make stuff. And I'm like, let's make stuff. You know, I love that. In fact, hell, I just got some today in the mail. This was a weird idea. This guy was making these drinks, and he would just kind of share them with his buddies. And he goes by the Bearded Goose. And I had already done a mascot for the guy, and they were calling it Goose Juice. And being the 40-something nerd that I am, Ecto Cooler was the only thing I can think of. So I made it a juice box, and he made it stickers and pins and t-shirts and all kinds of stuff. And that's awesome that they like this weird thought that I had. It's not that there isn't art direction coming from them. It's not draw whatever you like. Does it make sense for them? Does it fit the community? Does it work within the thing? There are constraints, obviously, but it's been my experience that the bigger the project, the more somebody's apt to be like, well, that doesn't fit the brand in the larger sense, or that doesn't do this and that doesn't do that, and we would never and we can never. So those little things start to chip away to the point where you start here and you end here. Other than being able to say that I've done something big for a big company, you still only got this. And that's not, I mean, there's a certain kind of person who loves that, but you know, man, we're getting old. Like, that's not, do you really want that? Like, really? You know, so, you know, I roll with these guys. I'm also, there's a children's book that I worked on, and again, smart art direction, really fun story that fit the kind of art that I was doing. It fit my sensibility. I fit with what they had in mind and changed what they had in mind in some ways. And that was awesome. That's coming out. I think you can pre-order it on BarnesandNoble.com currently. It's called The Robots Are Coming, So You Might As Well Dance. So that fit my weird retro sensibilities. But mostly where I'm at is small projects where they know what they want and that there has to be trust, I guess. You trusted me to do what you needed me to do with your mascot stuff, with your personal brand and with the lumberjack stuff. You know, my book publisher, Manny Camacho over at Caffeine and Ink Press, trusted me to do a thing for them, guided me through the process, got me to give them what they wanted and more than what they wanted, and as good as it could be. And these guys trust me to come up with, they'll come to me with weird ideas for their enamel pins and their hat stuff. What can I do? Let's do some fun, weird stuff. And, we go from there. That's my favorite thing.
I think that where you're at in the process, you're defining your version of it. So I think, just my opinion, but I think now is the time for you to follow through with that definition of where you want this to go and where you want your look to go. Because if anybody's following Manny on Instagram, you're going to see that you can see the evolution happening, and you can see it dialing in, and you can see the design and the style and the consistency is getting tighter and tighter. The more work he produces and the more stuff he puts out there. So I think you're on the right path of just kind of doing your thing right now.
It's been great. Like to tie into what we were talking about. I mean, if fear is an absolute killer. Fear is an absolute killer. Like staying on a path because you think it's the only path, or you think whatever. You should be more scared about staying at the party too long. Sometimes failure on a small level is worth it just to see what happens. I know for my first con, I was just like, oh, it's $50 for a table. Yeah, let's do it. That, what's the worst that could possibly happen? And I was unprepared, and I was a giant weirdo when I hit the table, but you grow, you get better. You bump your head a little bit, you get your feet wet, but it's fine. But within what's happened, like I said, being welcomed into the community, I actually, talked to my wife about this, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the money. We're fine money wise. We were stable. I took the money that they were paying me to create pins for them. And for the first time ever, after so much humming and hawing and so much thinking about it, I pulled the trigger for myself and made my own stuff, and didn't necessarily do what they were doing. I did my thing, and I said, the tendency with some people, some of these guys, is to put a hat on everything and whatever. And I'm like, well, I'm not really a hat collector. I like it, and I get that you guys are, but I'm not there. With that, still, the pin sold within that community, within the design community that I'm a part of, and whatever, the pins sold, and I couldn't be happier. As much as I get fulfillment making other people's ideas fun and great, there is a tiny part of me that, as much as I don't love the entire process of making and selling my own stuff, I do enjoy it. There is an extra bit of like, I'm here on stage by myself, and they still like it. And that means something.
Yeah, it definitely validates that creative process and the uniqueness that you bring to the table. So Manny, I'm gonna pull the plug on this, but I'm gonna have you back on. We got to keep talking about some of this stuff, and we got to come up with some more topics, because I think your perspective is really interesting in this, in that you've got a wealth of experience, but at the same time, you're carving new ground, and you're kind of at that place where others are of trying to make it go and trying to make that big decision. So I think your perspective is unique. It's fun to listen to. Well, Manny, thanks again and for coming on. I really appreciate you being a guest.
If you'd like to learn more about the CyberDogs experience, check us out online at cyberdogsmarketing.com for updated blogs, new podcast episodes, examples of previous work, and the brands we have and are currently working with, and much, much more.